welcome to episode 25 of the Daily Geeky Pastimes podcast. If you are listening to this live and you missed any other episodes, you can check them all out. All the VODs are on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Geeky Pastimes. And you can find them on things like Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, stuff like that. Wherever you normally listen to podcasts, this should show up. Let me know if you can't find it somewhere. If you're listening to this as a recording, you can check out the live recordings every weekday morning at 9 a.m. I record this over on youtube.com/Geeky Pastimes. And if you want to support the channel, like so many people, so many wonderful people do, it's only $1.99 a month at the cheapest tier, and that lets you get access to things like emojis and badges and things like that if you're in the live chat. And then you can support me with a little bit more money if you'd like. You just have to hit the join button on YouTube. Anyway, all of that out of the way, let's get talking about what we're going to be doing this week. We've got a few different news items. We're going to be talking a little bit about CounterStrike Go. We're going to be talking about Zelda. We're going to be talking about that Phil Spencer XCast interview. And then we're going to be talking about AI and Warzone. Particularly, it's difficult because I was talking about AI last week on the podcast. I don't mean that kind of AI. I mean the kind of bots, that are in strongholds and sometimes for events and black sites and stuff like that. That's what we're going to be talking about. And I know it's kind of a vaguely controversial issue. And I also know I'm going to be preaching to the choir possibly a little bit, because I think a lot of the people in my community tend to quite like that sort of stuff. And I know a lot of people in the sort of, more mainstream Call of Duty communities of, Twitter and Reddit and stuff like that are very much against them. So it's kind of, I don't know, maybe this is a little bit of an echo chamber. But I did put out a tweet, hopefully to stir up some engagement, but also to try and get some dissenting opinions in, because that's always interesting. So if you do have your own thoughts on that topic or any of the other topics that we talk about today, please let me know in chat, and then, I'll stop every now and then and read them out. I'll also, if anyone thinks of things that they want me to talk about in future episodes of the podcast, please do just, let me know in the comments or send me a tweet or something like that. I'm getting to the point now. I've done 25 episodes of this. A lot of the things that I already had in my head before I started doing this are I've kind of run through a lot of them now. So it's getting a little bit trickier to think of the topics for each podcast. And I like there being a topic. I like there being a discussion, debate. But doing that every single day is hard. So if you have ideas, do let me know, preferably in YouTube comments or Twitter comment or my Discord or something like that. That would be absolutely great. If anyone was wondering why there was no podcast last Friday, I did end up doing one on Thursday in the end. But there was no one on Friday because I went to Sweden for the weekend. I went to a place called Gothenburg, which is a city in the southwest of Sweden. We've been there a couple of times before. This was our third trip there. And we go there because there's a theme park called Lisberg, which is just this incredible place. It's not really a theme park, I guess. It's more of like an amusement park. But it's on the side of this big hill looking over Gothenburg. And apparently, the story goes, I don't know which parts are true and which bits is like just a folklore or whatever. But it's like some guy bought this like hill mountain thing for his daughter, Lisa. So that's why it's Leesburg, Lisa's mountain. And just decided to make like a fairground essentially on a mountain for his daughter, which is just like kind of incredible. And then when he died and like there wasn't someone in the family who wanted to carry it on, the local council just took it over. Like they just like decided to start running it because they saw it was good for the city. And so it's one of the rare occurrences, one of the rare sort of places where you have a local government running a theme park. Which, it happens in some other places in the world, but not really in Europe or America, as far as I know. It's pretty unique for that. And it's just run so incredibly well, like insanely well. We were really lucky. We had like beautiful weather and everything like that. It was all very, very good. But just going there, it's like, it's got a collection of crazy rides. I'm going to be a bit of a theme park nerd now, so I apologize for people who have no idea what I'm on about. But they've got like a B&M dive coaster. They've got a Mack Mega coaster. They've got a big woody, like I think it was an Intamin prefab wooden coaster. They've got some incredible flat rides, like some big flat rides, like a giant frisbee and stuff like that. And then they've got like loads of restaurants that are really cool. Like we went into like a haunted house style restaurant, like themed restaurant, whereas like while you're eating, some creepy guy came up to us and asked us if we'd tried the insects yet. And it's kind of, there is a scare maze next to it. There used to be something like an upcharge you had to pay extra to go into, but you didn't anymore, so we just went through there. And yeah, it's like themed as part of the same. That's meant to be themed to like this spooky hotel. And then the restaurant is like a part of that, which is very cool. And then there's like a load of fast food places. There's loads of like fairgroundy type games and stuff like that. Oh, it's got a Schwarzkopf roller coaster, a really cool one that goes down the hill. Yeah, and then it's got like some other proper restaurants. They've just built this massive new hotel, which is really why we went to go stay in the hotel because they didn't used to have a hotel on property before. And in the hotel, they had this like buffet restaurant that we went to on the first day. And you know, Sweden's got a reputation for being kind of expensive, so we were like, "Oh, this is gonna be a lot." But we went to this buffet. We didn't really know how much it cost, but my wife was just like, "Oh, I'll get it. Don't worry. Let's just all go." Because I was there with my wife and my sister-in-law. So we went to this buffet, and it was like amazing food, like really, really nice food, and a big range of different things. You know, loads of like barbecued meats and stuff, and then there was some Swedish like sausages and fish type stuff, and then there was some pasta and pizza, and you know, nice pizza, like not like the pizza pasta buffets you get in like Fort Park or Alton Towers. There was like really nice stuff that was really cool. Um, and yeah, there was all of this different food, and then you could get free coffee and free water, or you could pay for drinks, stuff like that. I had a beer, and then we all had this buffet. And then at the end, we're like, oh, how much is this going to be? And it ended up being 15 quid each, and that's with me having a beer. Like 15 quid for like an all you can eat buffet with all of that different stuff. Just seemed absolutely insane. So cheap. And that was with a tip as well, I think. Like that was just crazy. But yeah, very, very cheap compared to what we were expecting. But yeah, it was just a great time. We had a great trip. Oh, and that was the other thing. This theme park has like some of you might remember Disney has a fast pass system, you know, where you can for some rides, you used to be able to go get a paper ticket from the ride entrance and it would tell you a time to come back. So rather than standing in queue, you could like go around and you know go to the shops, get some food, go on other rides while you waited for the bigger ride. And then they changed it to an app where you could get fast passes on your phone. And there were problems with that, but it was pretty cool and it was free to anyone who went to Disney. Then recently they changed it to Genie Plus, where you have to pay £15 a day or more to get access to that. And then for some rides, you have to pay like for individual rides, like £10 for one ride, which seems crazy. Leesburg just had a thing on the app where it's like, oh yeah, if you're in the park, you can just download the app. You don't even need to make an account, don't need to pay anything. And you can just choose a ride and say, hey, I want 3 people to go on this ride, and it'll just give you a time to come back. And that was it. We basically didn't queue for the entire holiday. We just like, I think we maybe queued for nearly an hour for one ride where it was like kind of broken down. It was running on one train, but we'd kind of done everything. So we're like, oh, screw it, we'll go on this. Why not? And then after that, yeah, we didn't queue for anything for the rest of the trip, which was just amazing. Even though on Saturday, the park was busy, like it was a busy day. But we just like kept on using this and going around and going on the rides. And the park was open from like 11 a.m. to like 10 at night, I think it was. And like we were there I think we got there like a bit later in the afternoon. But then we stayed until 10 at night. So you get to see everything at sunset and in the dark and everything. Just spectacular place. Heartily suggest it. You know, especially if you're in the UK and you're thinking, you know, European theme parks to go to. Phantasialand in Cologne is amazing. Very easy to get to Cologne. Fly there from Stansted Airport for cheap on Ryanair. And Liseberg is just in Gothenburg. You can fly very cheap from Stansted to Gothenburg. It's like an hour and a half flight. Yeah, well worth doing. So definitely worth checking out. It's a cool place to go to. Anyway, enough theme park chat. Let's start talking about video games. Let's chat about games a little bit. So the first bit of news that I want to talk about is Zelda. Zelda is out this week, Tears of the Kingdom. I have pre-ordered it. I'm not like Nintendo don't send me copies of stuff. They said once that like they don't really do that with people that play Call of Duty or like any 18 certificate game. So I don't get that from Nintendo. So I'm not really sure what my content plans are going to be for. I'm not going to do videos about it, I don't think, because recording stuff off the Switch is a bit of a pain. I could stream it. I might. We'll see a little bit like closer to the time. It depends like when I get it and things like that. Like if I get it a day early because it's coming in the post. If I get it a day early or something like that and people aren't getting banned off Twitch for doing it, then I might stream the first couple of hours of it. But we'll see. Or it might just become my chilled game that I play off stream. I haven't really worked out what I'm going to do with that yet. But I am excited about it. Let me know in chat if you're up for watching me play some Zelda. It's a fun game, I suppose, to stream. It could be. I didn't really stream Breath of the Wild, but I can imagine it being fun because there's a lot of like experimentation and sort of messing around in it and stuff like that that tends to work quite well. I've realized over the last year or so that even though I get really excited about streaming new games, like story games, like Jedi Survivor and stuff like that, I actually get quite bored of streaming them fairly quickly because it's like everyone basically has the same experience. And if you're playing a game where everyone has basically the same experience, it's not that entertaining to stream because, you know, the people who want to play it will probably just want to play it rather than watch it. And then the people who don't want to play it aren't as interested in it. So like it's fun, and there's definitely like I know there's some people that can make their playthroughs really entertaining and do a really good job. I'm not sure if that kind of content's really for me anymore. Doing single player games, there's some things where there's games with a lot of freedom, like Starfield. Then I think there's a lot of space for it. Then you know I'll definitely stream Starfield, and I'm excited about that because with that it's like, how did you build your character? How are you interacting with these NPCs? How are you approaching these situations? Like there's a lot of differences. What quests are you taking on? What factions are you siding with? There's a lot of kind of variety in that. But yeah, stuff like Jedi Survivor and stuff, I'm not so sure about. And Zelda's like, I think Zelda's got enough choice where it's like, hey, I could maybe I'll do a lot of the story stuff off stream, and then I'll come on stream and do a bunch of the shrines and stuff like that, or just trying to find the secrets, like that sort of thing. Maybe we'll do something like that. SoCal said, I need a game to just chill out to that isn't Kerbal or COD. What's wrong with Kerbal and COD? Especially Kerbal. I really like Kerbal. I was watching a video of Kerbal Space Program last night and it made me want to play it again today. I might do some. I don't know. I might play. I asked Flynn if he's about to play any DMZ today. And if he's not, then I might stream some Redfall maybe. Just because I'm still enjoying it. Like I'm still having a good time with it. I don't think it's something that needs to be talked about a lot. I think like I can understand why a lot of people don't trust when I say that I'm enjoying it because I did a sponsored thing for them, which that video is doing terribly, which really annoys me. It's like my first big sponsored video for a game company that I care about a lot, and the video is just dying, and it's like, oh no, if anyone wants to go watch that video, it's a good video. It's just about the nests in Redfall. But yeah, for various reasons, I don't think that's not doing very well. So that's a shame. But yeah, but I am genuinely enjoying Redfall. I think it's a lot of fun, and I definitely want to finish it this week. So, the second news story, we'll get there eventually. Sorry, I'm taking my time. I'm just meandering today. It's because I had quite a chilled weekend. Well, I say chilled. I did end up walking like 32,000 steps on Saturday, which is insane. So I'm really tired, but I'm in a good mood and relaxed, and it's sunny, so it's nice. So I'm just kind of meandering around topics today. But the next one, CSGO, has broken its own records for concurrent players. This isn't like the most played game on Steam. That's PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. But it broke its own records and it got to 1.8 million concurrent players. Which, you know, for a point of context, I think Call of Duty at the moment is, and again, Steam isn't its main platform, where CSGO, it's the only platform. Oh no, it's not. You can play it on console, can't you? Anyway, you know, Call of Duty's on around 100,000 people at any given time at the moment. Which is still a lot, but, you know, a long way away. Right now, you know, something like Apex Legends on 153,000, PlayerUnknown 185, Dota 2 312,000. Those are big games with a lot of people playing, but Counter-Strike's on just over 1 million people right now on a Monday morning. Like right now, I think Call of Duty is probably on like 40,000 or something. Yeah, Call of Duty's on 40,000. Slightly behind War, Thunder, and Lost Ark, but above Naraka Blade Point. But yeah, kind of interesting that Counter-Strike's doing so well. Although, I feel like this is the sort of information, the sort of news, that it would be very easy to get the wrong conclusions from. I think there's some people will look at this and be like, well, Counter-Strike, like, because Counter-Strike's doing so well, that shows that there's a market for that kind of game, for more games like Counter-Strike, you know, these hyper-competitive Twitch shooters. And I don't think that's the right lesson to learn from that, personally. You know, obviously Valorant's doing well as well. You know, Valorant kind of took that idea of Counter-Strike and expanded on it with the powers and things like that. But I personally don't think Counter-Strike is doing so well just because of the quality of the game. I think there's kind of two things that's making Counter-Strike so successful right now. And these are things that the other games can learn from. And the first one is a bit trickier for something like Call of Duty to learn from. I thought CSGO was on console. Maybe I'm wrong. For some reason I thought it was. I know like you could play Counter-Strike with like the orange box back in the 360 days. But I don't know. Maybe they never released CSGO on console. No idea. Anyway, the first reason why I think Counter-Strike Go does so well is because it'll run on old PCs. it'll run on almost any PC. Like, you can get it running. And I know some people have, like, you know, they'll only play Counter-Strike Go if they're running at 300 frames a second or whatever. But there's a lot of people that are more than happy to play games at, like, you know, less than 60 frames a second sometimes, but at least, you know, 60 being kind of a benchmark. And CSGO is a first-person shooter that you can play. It doesn't take up too much disk space. It's not a big download. It's free to play, and you can play it on, you know, whatever PC you've already got. And that's such a big deal that I think so many people, especially people who are really into PC gaming, overlook. That lots of people, me included with this, often think like, oh, if you're into PC gaming, you know, you need to have like a high-end graphics card. You know, you need to have something like, I've got a 3080, and I sometimes think, oh, this is a bit rubbish. I've got a 1080 actually just sitting on a shelf next to me, not doing anything. I had kept it in case I needed it, in case I needed a backup graphics card. But it's like, I should probably sell it now. I should probably at least see how much I could get for it. But anyway, like, you know, a lot of people are like me and sort of think that you need something kind of cutting edge just so you can play every game. You know, I wouldn't like it if a game came out on PC and I was like, oh, my PC's not good enough to play it. Like, that would annoy me. That would bother me in some way. So I end up spending like kind of a crazy amount of money on PC. And I'm not, you know, I don't have a 4090 or something like that. I'm not that crazy about my money. And I'm not that lucky to get like those kind of sponsorships. But I spend a lot. Like, every couple of years, I'll probably end up putting like a few £100 into the PC. And then every now and then I'll spend like £1,000 on it. And a lot of people just aren't in that situation. Like, a lot of people aren't lucky enough to be able to put that kind of money into a game PC. So a lot of people have the PC that, you know, their family uses for emails and stuff, or a lot of people have the PC that they got a long time ago for, you know, college or whatever, and then they've just kept it. Like, they've never upgraded it. They've never got to a point where they're like, hey, I want to play GTA 5, or I want to play Warzone or something like that at high resolution. So I need to go spend like £1,000 upgrading my PC or getting a new PC. A lot of people just aren't like that. They're not in that position to be able to do that, or they're not in a position where they want to do that, where that seems like a good spend of money. But lots of people do have some kind of PC. Lots of people do have a PC, especially from when PCs used to be a lot cheaper. And so the fact that Counter-Strike runs on all those things, I think, is a massive part of its success. That it's like, people who enjoy playing games but don't want to spend a huge amount of money on them, that's something they can do. And like, there's a lot of other games like it, like Dota, League of Legends, even PlayerUnknown's Battleground actually runs on a surprising amount of like a surprisingly low spec PC, I guess, because it's kind of old and it's built on a really old engine. But these games like work really well on older PCs, and that's kind of something that gives them access to a massive audience. People always talk about, oh, it's obvious why there's hardly any PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X games, like exclusive games just for that generation. And it's annoying for people that own the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X being like, why aren't they making games that use the power of the consoles that we've got? And the answer's obvious. It's because there's not that many people who own the consoles compared to the people that own the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One. And therefore, for developers, it's not really worth it to them to make games for a smaller audience. You know, they might as well make games that are backwards compatible, so then a much bigger audience can access it. And you think the same thing is actually true of PCs. Like, there's not really much incentive for people to make PC games where you need like a 4070 or something like that to run it, where you need like a £2,000 PC to run it. There's not an incentive to do that, like, because the market is so much smaller. If you want to reach the most people, you want to make a game that more people can run. You know, you look at super successful PC games like, you know, Roblox, Minecraft, Terraria, Undertale. Like, a lot of these games specifically will run on nearly anything. Like, they'll run on basically any computer that you have. Fortnite, you know, runs surprisingly well on a sort of weaker PC, or at least it used to before Unreal 5. It sort of struggles on my PC on Unreal 5 now, Fortnite, especially if you turn up any of the fancy graphic settings, which kind of sucks. But anyway, yeah, like, I think that's the key to a lot of success on PC. And it's something that I wonder whether Call of Duty have almost shot themselves in the foot with it on PC. That Call of Duty games have never been, in my mind at least, they've never been that well optimized on PC. They've never been like that easy to get running super, super well. It always used to be a thing like, before Black Ops 4, it always used to feel like if you were playing a game of Call of Duty on PC, often there would be optimization problems. It'd be difficult to get high frame rates. It would be difficult to make it look really good. Like, it was a bit of a pain. And obviously they've had much more of a PC focus since Modern Warfare 2019 came out and Warzone came out and stuff like that. But still, it's quite hard to get decent performance in Warzone unless you're willing to like turn everything down all the way. And even then, like a lot of stuff, you know, like your CPU is quite important, which is not in a lot of games. And that means that it can chug on a lot of systems that would otherwise be quite good. And it's kind of, I do wonder if, because Call of Duty have gone for this whole thing of really good graphics, always running at 60 frames a second, and the game is built around 60 frames a second, that they've just sort of moved themselves out of that market a little bit. Because on console, obviously, Call of Duty have always been, I would say, has always been incredibly well optimized on console. Like the fact that we've been playing games, you know, Call of Duty games for like 15 years on console that have always been 60 frames a second. I know sometimes they release a weird version on like the DS or the Wii or something that doesn't make that. But generally, all of the Call of Duty games have been 60 frames a second and looked really good. Like they do look really good. Like if you compare them to other first person shooters, Call of Duty games always look really good. And yeah, like they're sort of high fidelity, high frame rate, super finely tuned for the consoles that they're on. And then you look back at like, then when you get to PC, that just can't happen. Like they can't fine tune it in the same way that they do for consoles, and you end up with something that's a bit of a resource hog. And that means there's lots of people that just can't play Call of Duty. There's lots of people that their PC's just not good enough to play Warzone, which is a shame. And I do think like when you look at other games like X Defiant that are coming out soon, or Valorant, where they've gone for a look that's very easy like to turn down all of the graphic settings because it's got like a vaguely cartoony look. You can turn down all the graphic settings and everything still looks crisp, everything still looks nice, the art style still shines. Whereas Call of Duty turns down all the graphic settings and it looks kind of muddy and blocky and like hard to tell what's going on. I think that might be a mistake on their part. I think like, you know, maybe there's a place for both, but yeah, like I think like maybe that could be something that would help them in future, is if they tried to develop the graphics and the engine stuff in such a way that it worked better on worse PCs, if that makes sense, rather than trying to push the boundary, like trying to make it look better and better and better. I do kind of think, and maybe it's an age thing, that this has happened with basically all games at this point, that I don't care so much about what they look like. Like, it's very rare now that I'll play a game and be like, oh, well, this game's good because it looks amazing. Sometimes, you know, I'll be playing games and I'll be like, oh, this looks cool. Like Jedi Survivor, there's bits of it that look cool. Dead Island 2, there's some like landscapes in that look cool. But it's like, it's a side thing, you know, it's something where it's like just a bit of my brain goes like, oh, that looks nice. And then I move on. It's like I've seen people complaining about the graphics in Redfall, and I just think like, oh, Redfall looks kind of cool. I like it. I understand the water wall around the edge doesn't look that great. But like for the most part, I think it looks like a fine game. You know, it's very colourful, which I quite like. And it's got its own style, which I would count that for a lot more than, you know, just being pretty. There's some games that I think do need to be kind of pretty, like the Forza games. You know, driving games tend to be a lot better when they're just sort of spectacles. And games like Star Citizen like do really well with it. But for games where it's like more about the gameplay, more about like the interaction with the world and stuff like that, and being able to read your environment very quickly, I think like they can get away with a lot worse graphics than what Call of Duty does. So I think that's a big part of the reason why CounterStrike's good. Sorry, I just again meandered off that for like 15 minutes. But a couple people in chat were just saying, Mad Jock said, my game for who's talking about his game for chilling is Elite Dangerous. I do want to play Elite Dangerous again. I used to be quite into it, and then I didn't play it for like a year. Then I loaded it up again and like had to go through that whole process of learning how to dock without crashing into everything. And it's surprisingly difficult. And Bod said, for your specs, you're surprised how badly Warzone 2 runs on your PC, as it's such a CPU heavy bound game. Yeah, I think most people feel like that. I think most people are disappointed with the performance of Warzone 2. You know, you essentially, with Warzone, you've got a choice of make it look ugly, but run at high frame rates, or make it look nice, but kind of just try to keep it at, you know, a steady above 60. Whether, you know, if you've got a lot of money and decent hardware, you can maybe get it to a steady 120, but that's pretty hard. I think I would struggle to get Warzone looking the way I want it to look at a steady 120 frames a second. I think that's pretty rare, pretty unlikely. Anyway, the other reason I think Counter-Strike does well, and this is something that I think all games should copy, basically, and we're going to sort of talk about this a bit more of the main topic, but it's participation rewards. Like, a lot of people, I think, are playing Counter-Strike Go right now because they either want to get, like, now they've said that the loot's going to carry over from Counter-Strike to Counter-Strike 2. They want to get, like, the knives and things like that. They've heard about these items that's, like, cost a lot of money, that you can sell them for a lot of money, which I've always been a bit dubious of that whole idea of an ecosystem. I don't think that's a good thing. But anyway, people play it to try and get those things, which you just get them by playing. Like, you don't get them by doing some challenge. You just get them by playing more. And then you also get, like, people think, I don't think it's actually true at the moment, but people think that you're going to get access to CSGO 2 by playing more CSGO. So people are trying to get access. So that's going to massively inflate the player counts. And you see this all the time with, like, Twitch drops, with, like, there used to be with the Steam trading cards and things like that. Anything where you do something where it's like, hey, you play this or you watch this for a certain amount of time, you've got an increased chance of getting something for free. It just gets people playing. It's just something that happens. And it's something that, like, I genuinely think basically all games would benefit from. Like Marvel Snap, I play Marvel Snap absolutely tons. I got up to, like, level 60 something last season. But Marvel Snap, you just, like, you play, and every now and then you unlock a new card. Every now and then you get some currency which you can then spend to get a card or to upgrade a card. And it's like you're just constantly getting something. And that side of it, like upgrading cards and stuff like that, it doesn't really matter whether you win or lose. It's just because you're playing. And it's like, I get that there's some horrible manipulation going, and it's probably bad, and it's going to make games addictive and stuff like that. But from a purely objective point of, like, how do you get more people playing your game? Passive rewards. That's just a way forward. And it's something that Call of Duty doesn't do. I always like to sort of try and bring this back to Call of Duty a little bit. I think that's an interesting point of comparison, just because, you know, all of us are kind of into it. And yeah, I think with Call of Duty, there just aren't that many things that you just get for playing. And I was talking about that a little bit on Twitter last night. I saw B. Breadman posted something about, like, do you think Warzone Ranked will save Warzone? And I put in a tweet, like, I don't think Warzone needs saving. I think, like, from what we saw in the earnings report and everything, it's doing well. It's, like, doing fine. But anyway, I think Warzone Ranked will bring people back because they'll be getting something. They'll be making some kind of progress. You get rank points just by playing Warzone. And while you might go up and down ranks based on how you're doing it, you'll unlock stuff just by playing more. And at the moment in Warzone, that doesn't really happen. Like, I know you get experience, so the first time you level up through stuff, you get stuff and you get, like, emblems, but no one cares about emblems. I don't think people care about emblems. I say no one. Maybe there is someone that is trying to unlock all of them. But I don't think many people care about emblems. And good luck trying to get all of them, because one of them you have to be the best player in ranked. So if you were trying to collect all the emblems, you're screwed. But yeah, and it's like the battle pass is like a thing where you have to pay extra money to then unlock stuff. And even then, I think it used to be, I don't know if it's changed that much, but it used to be that it would take like 45 hours to unlock everything on a battle pass. Over 2 months, that's not actually that much time played. That's, you know, like, I suppose it's an hour and a half a day. But for a lot of people who play these games a huge amount, an hour and a half a day isn't that much. But I think, like, Call of Duty could probably benefit just from having something like, oh, you know, every time you finish a game, you get, like, a chance of, you know, like Rainbow Six, you get a chance of opening one of those packs or something. You get a chance of a random cosmetic. You get a chance of getting a blueprint, like, or an operator or something like that. There's a lot of bundles in the store that I always think, like, does anyone ever actually buy these? Like, there's a lot of bundles that just look terrible, or they're really boring, and they're basically like the default skins. I always think, like, a lot of those, they'd probably be better off splitting those up and making those into, like, random rewards. You know, every now and then when you've played a game, you get a chance of unlocking something for free, and sometimes it'll be an operator skin, sometimes it'll be a blueprint. And I think people would be kind of into that. I think that would be good for the game in terms of keeping people playing. And I think that's why CSGO, a big part of why there's 1 million people playing it right now, I bet there's a lot of those people who just want to play more to get the participation rewards. And it's, I think it's only a bad thing in terms of it could be addictive. I think, like, there's a danger to it. But I don't think it's a bad thing in terms of gameplay. I know there's some people who are like, oh, participation rewards, like, these people didn't do anything to earn the stuff they get. It's like, oh, who cares? It's a video game. It's a toy. Like, it literally doesn't matter. But yeah, like Silent Giant just said there, skins and blueprints are cool, even vehicle customizations, but emblems and stickers are not great. Yeah, like whenever you get, I genuinely think it feels bad when you get a reward in Call of Duty and it's like a loading screen, an emblem, a sticker. It's just or a calling card. It's just stuff that I just don't care about. If the calling cards are like something to show off that you did something, like when we used to get a calling card for doing like an Easter egg, like a zombies Easter egg, that was kind of cool. Because then people can see on your friends. It's like there's the nuke one that a lot of people on my friends list use. And it's like, hey, that person got a nuke. Like, that's a thing. But the random calling cards you get just like thrown out, I just don't think matter. Like, I don't think anyone cares about them that much. There's a lot of bad rewards, which is kind of shame. Kind of a shame. Anyway, the last piece of news I want to talk about today is the Phil Spencer XCast interview. So this was something where it was just like a happy accident for XCast. But also, I think a pretty classy move from Phil Spencer. I'll like happily go on record that I'm like a bit of an Xbox fanboy at times. Like, I have a PlayStation. I have a PlayStation 5. I prefer my Xbox a lot more. I enjoy the Xbox ecosystem. I love Game Pass. I like the Xbox console. I love the Xbox controller, all of that stuff. And I really like Phil Spencer. I was lucky enough at Gamescom a few years back to meet Phil Spencer and Major Nelson, Larry Herb. And chat to them for a little bit, and that was really cool. And he seemed like a really nice guy. He genuinely seems to understand like gaming and the gaming community. I think he's one of those rare people of where he's got a good sense of like, obviously he's a businessman. Obviously he's like an effective businessman, but he's also enjoys games and he plays games and he cares about gaming being a like art form. Sounds a little bit pretentious, but he cares about gaming being something more than just a way to make money. I think he cares about creativity. That's a better way of putting it. He cares about giving people the opportunity to make something different. And I think that's cool. And anyway, so he did this interview of XCast. They had an interview booked for XCast and they were going to be talking about something boring. I don't know what it was. And it probably wasn't boring. It was probably something interesting, but something unrelated. And then it happened that the interview was planned for 2 days after Redfall came out. And Redfall came out, and obviously it had like a bit of a critical panning, like really bad reviews and stuff, lots of technical problems. And the kind of funny people were like, well, we like expected to just get a phone call cancelling the interview. And he didn't. He still came on and he was like, yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. And he was happy to talk about Redfall. He was happy to talk about like Xbox against PlayStation. He was happy to talk about kind of the fact that, Xbox hasn't had really good first party exclusives for a while now. And there's a lot of stuff that they promised a few years ago that we still haven't really seen. They did that E3 where they showed off Fable and, the Perfect Dark and all of this stuff. And we haven't seen any of the, and Avowed and Everwild and all that stuff. And we haven't seen them. And he was just talking really candidly about it. It's well worth a watch. It's like not that long, but it's like well worth watching or listening to. Because it's like a podcast. XCast is the kind of funny podcast for Xbox stuff. And yeah, it's like some of the stuff he talked about, some of the stuff he touched on. First of all was talking about Redfall. And they were saying, do you think it should have been delayed? Like lots of people look at Redfall and are saying like, why didn't you delay it? Why would you release something in that state? And he was saying that it wasn't really a situation where a delay would have helped that much. I think there's an argument that they should have delayed it just until the 60 frames a second thing came out. But I genuinely think that 60 frame second patch is going to be quite soon from what he was saying. And I guess that they probably didn't want Redfall to clash with like Zelda and then with Diablo. There's like a lot of stuff coming out over the next few months that's quite big. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple of big Xbox games over the summer from what I've heard. So I don't think there was much of a chance to delay it past there without it clashing with something else. And, they always want there to be some big release on Game Pass every month. And he was saying that it's like, it was more that Redfall had a creative vision and they weren't reaching that. They weren't like, what's the word? Securing it, obtaining it. No, realizing it. They weren't realizing that creative vision. and spending more time on it wasn't going to change that. It wasn't going to make it into a better game just because they spent more time on it. And he was saying, like, there's two reasons a game isn't, like, you know, good at any given point. It's like, is it a production issue where it's like their production timeline doesn't meet up with the release timeline? Like, you know, they don't have enough time to do the things that they want to do. Or is it just that the game isn't working? Like, just that the game isn't as much fun as they thought it was going to be when they were concepting it? Because bear in mind, a lot of stuff in gaming kind of comes together towards the end. You know, you have, like, at one given time, especially with a bigger company, you've got lots of different people working in different disciplines. You know, like the art team are working at the same time as level design, at the same time as the stories being written, at the same time as, like, the weapons are being worked out, at the same time as, like, the graphics are being sorted out. Like, all of those things are kind of being done in some ways separately. And then, you know, you might be playing it and thinking, like, oh, okay, well, like, this isn't working that well, but it will work better once we've got the art in, or once we've got the sound effects in, or once we've got the multiplayer going, or whatever. And then at some point, you're going to start being able to put all that together into, you know, the beta version of the build, where you've got, like, the content is there and you're sort of putting it all together. And then sometimes that'll happen and you'll be like, this isn't that much fun. Like, this isn't, like, no, it hasn't come together in the way that you wanted it to. And spending more time on it isn't going to necessarily make it any better, you know, or not meaningfully better. And essentially, you know, when you're delaying a game, you're paying all of those people more money. You know, you're paying their salaries and stuff like that while they work on something that's like, are you going to get a return on that? Like, is the game going to sell more because you spent an extra 6 months on it, an extra year on it, or whatever? And I think with Redfall, the decision was made that, like, no, it was like, it was in the state it was in. It wasn't as much fun as they had hoped it was when they started making it. But it was kind of at the point where it was worth releasing. Like, and, you know, Arcane have cancelled a bunch of games. There's tons of games that Arcane have been working on and then didn't end up happening. And it's like, it was past that point where it's like, it was worth releasing, but it wasn't as good as they hoped it was going to be. So it's like a delay didn't make sense. And he talked a bit about how they do internal reviews where apologies for all the coughing. They did do internal reviews, you know, where they get a reviewer in, often like an actual game journalist in, or maybe a panel of them, to review the game as it is and tell them what scores they would get. And they were saying they expected the reviews to be higher. Based on that, he said, like, they expected it to be double digits higher. So, you know, maybe they did the internal reviews and people were like, oh, yeah, this is like a 7 out of 10. And they were like, oh, okay, like, we can live with that. And then, you know, when it came out, actually got a 6 out of 10. That's, like, you know, disappointing to them. But it was really interesting just hearing him talk frankly about it, being like, yeah, we know it didn't work. We know we promised a lot of things with lots of first-party games. And there's been, like, loads of different issues that have, like, caused problems. And that meant that we haven't delivered on the stuff that we wanted to. And, like, he was just quite frank about that, being like, yeah, like, a lot of stuff hasn't worked out well. Like, it hasn't been a good time lately for Microsoft. And that's fine. And they talked a bit about, like, you know, the CMA thing and how they're going to appeal that. But then one of the other more interesting things that I really wanted to talk about today was when he talked about the PlayStation. I touched on this last week in the podcast, that, you know, I don't think Xbox really care as much about the whole console race thing. And, you know, I don't even think PlayStation care that much about it, or Nintendo care that much about it. I think it's more of like a thing that's created by gaming fans because it's, you know, fun supporting your team. And he talked about that a little bit, and he was saying that, like, essentially, like, Xbox lost the worst generation to lose. Like, the Xbox One didn't do very well. The Xbox One was, like, a bit of a failure for lots of different reasons, and in lots of markets it didn't do very well. You know, in the UK it actually did quite well. But in a lot of places around the world, it didn't do well at all. And, you know, he was saying that that's for lots of different reasons. He wasn't involved in the design of the Xbox One or the initial release of the Xbox One. He wasn't in charge then, rather. But, yeah, he was like, they lost it then. And that was, like, the worst generation to lose because that was when everyone was creating their digital library. So now, going into this generation, lots of people will carry on playing on PlayStation because they're like, well, I've got all my games on PlayStation, I've got all my saves on PlayStation, I've got all of my like all of my content and everything that I've bought digitally is on PlayStation. This is the first generation where this has really happened. This has been a big deal. And so, like, moving over from PlayStation to Xbox now is a much kind of bigger deal for someone. Like, that means, you know, giving up on all of those games that you already had. And he was saying, so in some ways, it doesn't matter how good the Xbox games are, they're still not going to win over the PlayStation fans just because they can't make it good. They can't possibly make games good enough that people are willing to abandon their gaming libraries. So, you know, he was saying if Starfield is like an 11 out of 10, it still won't win over many PlayStation gamers. Like, that still won't be the sort of thing that would get them over. So Xbox have taken like a different kind of path with the Xbox Series X, and they're more about trying to get games into the hands of as many people as possible and trying to provide something different. You know, they have to have a different business model to PlayStation because they can't compete on just we're the console with the best games. Like, that's not something they can win. That's not something they can do. So instead, they're much more trying to be like, hey, you know, if you have an Xbox, then you can get Game Pass and get all of these games, which you can then also play if you're on PC. You can also play them on your phone. You can play them on your TV if you've got a Samsung TV. They're trying to do that. I think, like, he didn't say it, but I think the implication was they want Game Pass to be on PlayStation. They want it to be on Switch and everything like that. Like, they want to be able to be sort of some company that does make the Xbox, but also releases games for basically everything, because they know that they're not going to get people buying the Xbox as their main console anymore. That it's going to be like an additional thing. So if you can find ways to make the Xbox like something worthwhile to buy as well as a PlayStation, then I think that's more valuable. And I think that's that's an interesting way of looking at it. And kind of, again, as someone that buys all of the consoles and has a gaming PC, I find my Xbox very valuable. It's like, it's a very simple system. I've got access to tons of games without having to spend very much money on it. Everything kind of works on it. I can play all my old games and they look better on it and stuff like that. Everything seems to work very easily. Whereas the PlayStation, I find a massive pain. Like, I find nearly everything about the PlayStation very annoying. Like, the way that they do cloud saves, especially from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5, I found very annoying. The way they set up their PlayStation Plus subscriptions and everything, I find needlessly complicated. It just sort of, PlayStation, I play it because of the exclusives. And Xbox, I play it because I enjoy playing on Xbox. It's like a different kind of mindset. Anyway, let's go on to the main topic today. And that is, should bots be in Call of Duty? We've only got 20 minutes, so I'll run through this a bit quicker than I was planning on. But please do let me know in chat what your thoughts are on this. Please do let me know which way you tend to lean on this. Because I say which way you lean. This doesn't need to be like a binary thing. It doesn't need to be one thing or the other, I don't think. And we've talked about that a few times before, about why it doesn't need to be like that. Also, don't forget to like the stream if you haven't already. So I'll start off with some pros and cons for having AI in Warzone. So we're talking about the bots. We're talking about the bots in strongholds and black sites and stuff like that. And let's start off with the cons, because I think these are the ones that have been bandied around. The whole reason I've been talking about this is because I saw loads of tweets over the weekend of people saying, get AI out of Warzone. Like, they just need to bin the AI, get AI out of Warzone. It's a terrible experience. I saw Benny Central posted something about that. I think Lackey posted something about that. I've seen a bunch of people just being like, get rid of them. And a lot of the arguments seem to revolve around things like, first of all, that they supposedly cause server problems. I'm a little bit tentative about this. I'm not saying that, oh, they definitely don't. I'm more like, I don't think it's obviously true that they do. So, like, it's clear that it must be very hard to get the AI running at the same time as having 150 players running around a map. Like, that is just obvious. Like, just, if nothing else, the fact that other games don't do it. There aren't other games, as far as I know, there's no other games that have anything like the player count of Warzone, and then also have the AI that act like they do in Warzone. Because I know, obviously, in Fortnite you have bots, but they pretty much just stand there and occasionally run towards something to shoot. And then in games, like Apex, they did have the animals and stuff. I don't know if they still do, but they have like basically no AI. They don't seem to really do much like thinking or anything like that. And then, obviously you have games like Escape from Tarkov and stuff where they do have AI, or The Division, but they've got a much lower player count, so that kind of makes up for it. Warzone is doing something that's fairly unique, and I can imagine that would be insanely difficult to do. But when people are like, oh, all the server problems, right now the servers for Warzone are really bad, where things get laggy, things are crashing all the time, things are like, really bad for some of the servers, especially if you're playing at peak time. And people are saying, oh, that's definitely because of the bots, because you can look at how the server problems get much worse when the bots spawn. The bots spawn with the strongholds opening, and then that makes the servers bad. And I think that's a little bit of like correlation, but not necessarily causation. Like there could be a million other things happening at that point in the game when the strongholds open that could actually be the cause of the server problems. Maybe it's something to do with all of the new loot chests opening. Maybe it's something to do with the the fact that you can get the loadouts from them. Maybe it's something to do with the black site keys. Maybe it's something to do with now they've got redeploy packs, because these server problems seem to start when we had that update where we started getting redeploy packs in the strongholds. Maybe it's the redeploy packs, because it's like, we've talked about it a million times, but like gaming's incredibly complicated. Game development's incredibly complicated. There could be so many different things. It could be a musical cue that starts then that's causing some problems. Like, who knows? But I think like the way people are saying like, oh, well, this happens when this happens, so therefore it must be this. I just think that's kind of maybe jumping over other possibilities. It's like leaping to a conclusion without having very much information, which is about it. Like I said, I'm not saying bots don't cause sub problems. I'm saying I don't know, and neither do all of these people that are saying that they know. I think the only people who might know are the developers. And even then, I'm fairly confident a lot of the developers don't know, because I think something like this, like the server problems that have been going on for weeks at this point, would have been fixed. It's been like a month of having these really serious server problems. It would have been fixed if it was something that was easy to fix or something that was obvious. And if I genuinely believe if it was the AI causing the server problems, the AI would have already been disabled. I wouldn't be like, to me, and again, I'm just speculating wildly. It makes sense that the game would have essentially a switch to say, hey, let's not have the AI in the game. Let's have a way to turn them off in case there's some horrible bug with them, in case there's some glitch, in case there's something where they crash games, that they would have some way of turning it off, like they seem to for nearly everything else. And the fact that they haven't turned the AI off, even when like World Series of Warzone was running and the games were crashing, makes me think that it's not as simple as that. That it's not that that's causing it. But anyway, so although lots of people are saying it's the server problems, I don't think that's necessarily the problem. But another bad side of the AI, there is a thing that I can understand people being annoyed about, is it's not fun getting killed by AI in a battle royale. Like, in a battle royale, generally you're going in to fight against other players to see who's the best out of the 150 people that play. And I think, I would say, that people generally don't like it if they get killed by bots. And I don't think it's ever actually happened to me in Battle Royale. I think I've been downed by them before, especially when it's been a bit laggy and stuff. But I don't think I've ever been fully killed by bots. But it's like, you can see how it can happen. A lot of the time people fight at strongholds when they open. And if you're weak from a fight with another player, and then you run into a bot, and the bot just like melees you or shotguns you or anything, they could finish you off very easily. Like, that's definitely something that I can see happening. Or, the Juggernaut in the black site and stuff like that could kill you. And it's just not a lot of fun. It's not a lot of fun. It's not a lot of fun being killed by a player, but it's even worse just getting killed by AI, like where you'll feel like, oh, that's annoying. That's just a little bit random. Dave said, I think you're more likely to get third-partied fighting bots that wouldn't normally be there, and that's annoying. Yeah, like if you didn't have the bots, every fight would just be fighting against players, and that would be maybe less annoying in some ways. I mean, you can still get third-partied just by fighting another player, and then another player turns up, but I don't know. So, and then the third con that I think, and I think this is, to me, this is probably the biggest one for a lot of streamers who are complaining about it right now, is that it slows down those hyper-competitive players. There are some players who go into Warzone and they want to get, 30 kills in a game. They want to, like, that's what they're aiming for and win. And when they go to the strongholds, because it's the quickest way to get a loadout, that slows them down, and they get, redeploy and advanced UAVs and stuff once they get the black site. That slows them down quite a lot, that they've got to fight the bots, and they don't find that interesting. They don't find it interesting to fight the bots. They don't find the time and the ammo that they're spending. They don't find that a fun interaction. and because they want to be fighting players, they want to be killing players, and therefore it's just kind of an annoying bit of the game, an annoying sort of obstacle in the game for those players. I would say I think those players are like, when we talk about a minority of, a minority of Call of Duty players are actually on Twitter or Reddit who care about it and talk about it on there. I think then it's an even smaller minority of them are the sort of people who are hyper competitive in Call of Duty. I think it's a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of people who are like going out and getting 30 kills in a game of Warzone. I would love to see statistics of like, there must be a curve somewhere of if you plotted the number of people who have got each like their maximum kills, what's their maximum kills? And so like, I'd love to see what that would look like. So, you think, okay, you've got 100 kills at one end, and I imagine nobody's got 100 kills in a single game of Warzone. And then it goes down, and then you'd get to what, like 60 kills or so? I imagine there's probably people that have done that, but that would be like, dozens of people maybe in the world have ever managed to do that, and taking out the hackers and stuff. And then it would start going up. So like people who have managed to get 50 kills, maybe that's hundreds of people who have managed to get 50 kills. And then people who have got 40 kills, probably still hundreds, but maybe 1,000 people. And then, it'd go up like then how many people have got 30 kills? Definitely in the thousands of people there. And then like 20 kills, I would still probably say thousands. And I think the graph would end up looking like really kind of quite flat. And then you'd get down to like maybe 10 kills, and then it would start spiking up and being like, okay, most people who have played Warzone have probably had a game where they got like 10 kills. But and then I would say most people probably haven't had a game where they got 20 kills. Like that would be my gut feeling, would be the average Warzone player is probably closer to having their personal best at around 10 kills rather than 20. So, and then like these people who are going for like trying to get 30, 40, 50 kills are like a fraction of a percent. I think that's what's happening, personally. And so like these hyper competitive players, while like it's not like their feelings are invalid, it's not like their opinions are invalid, it's just they are representing such a tiny fraction of the people who play it that it's almost like, do you really want to build a game around those people? Otherwise, you end up with something like bloody Hyperscape, which I think was built around those people, and then clearly there wasn't an audience for it. So let's talk about, so those are the cons anyway of bots. Let's talk about the pros. So I've got two here, two reasons why I think, personally, I think AI are a good thing in Warzone. And the first one is its variety. It gives you something else to think about. It means that there are places on the map where they are different and you need to think differently about how you take the fight. And I've always kind of said that my problem with Warzone is that it can get tedious. It can get very samey. And this is my problem with Apex Legends. This is my problem with a lot of Battle Royale games. Fortnite, a lot of the time, is that you can often get in situations where every fight you take is basically the same. In Warzone, essentially, in my mind at least, you have close range fights and you have long range fights. And because of a lot of game design decisions around it, particularly loadouts and the gunsmith, long distance fights come down to either you have someone who's really good with a sniper rifle and will down you in one shot, or you have people who use assault rifles who have some build where there's basically no recoil and they can just keep you locked down from a very, very long way away and do damage on you. And that, to me, like, that's what long range fights are. It's like the person who's the better shot with a sniper rifle or an assault rifle, or who has the better gun, a sniper rifle or assault rifle, will generally win those. Then you have the close range fights where, like, guns still matter. Having a high rate of fire gun still is good, but generally movement matters more. Like, generally, I would say with a close range fight, the person that can kind of outplay the other one, that can get around, attack from an unexpected angle, move around, break someone's lock, like break someone's aim and stuff like that, those sort of people tend to win those fights. And in my experience of Warzone 2, since they made it so everyone's got their loadouts all the time, every fight is basically that. Every fight is basically a very, very frantic, rushing, close quarters fight where whoever's got the best movement wins, or a long range fight where whoever's got the best aim wins. And that's all that happens. Like, it's so rare in Warzone that you have a fight where one person's in a vehicle, or you have a fight where there's like 3 teams and they're all fighting each other and doing different things, or you have fights where there's like lots of like long movement and like running around and flanking and stuff like that. That seems to happen much less than there's just like long range fight, short range fight, long range fight, short range fight, and that's like all that happens. And I think bots just change that up a little bit. That if you go to an area where there's bots, then you know that rather than fighting 3 or 4 super mobile, aggressive players, you're going to be fighting a load of really defensive, maybe like a dozen really defensive bullet sponges. You know, there's going to be AI that will take a lot of ammo to take down, and they will probably take a lot of armor off you because it's going to be a longer fight. But they're going to be mostly stationary. They're not going to move that much. They're going to be all in one place, but you've also got to worry about the fact that they'll get reinforced and more will come and stuff like that. And I think that's an interesting kind of bit of variety. It breaks up the long range, short range fight, long range fight, short range fight. Now you've got a time where it's like, okay, you might be fighting players while there's also these other threats in the area. There's these other dangers. And the other players, you know, they're going to have to deal with them too. So sometimes, you know, you might be going near a stronghold and you hear all of the shooting going off where someone's fighting bots. And you're like, okay, now I know they're distracted. They're going to be looking towards where the bots are. I can like go around behind them, or I can go and try and third party them and take them out then. And I think that's like, to me at least, that just makes the game more interesting. That just means that's something else that can potentially happen in a game. And that's like what I care about almost more than anything else in Battle Royale games. In most games, really, it's just like variety. I don't really like games where it's the same thing happening over and over and over and over again. You know, like I just find that kind of tedious, which is like a bit of a shame. And I can understand why some people don't care about that, because some people just care about the competition of being the best at those long range and short range fights, and they want to have as many of them as possible, and they want to get really good at them because if they're winning them, it makes them feel good. And I can understand that. But for me, someone who, you know, isn't going to win all of those long range and short range fights, and a lot of them feel like a sort of 50-50 toss up, I quite appreciate having something else. I quite appreciate having something else that can kind of change the situation, change the sort of layout. And I think like that's why also I personally like the beginning and end of games quite a lot more than the middle, because I like, you know, at the beginning where you've got to think about like what loot you've got, you're just getting ground loot, no one has to load out weapons, you've got to deal with all of the weirdness of the ground loot and the problems it has, you know, not being able to control recoil, or not having a good sight, or having a tiny magazine, or whatever it is. Like having that kind of fight I find a lot more interesting because they're so different to each other. And then also having like the fights at the end where you've got the gas pulling in different directions and you're trying to think about what to do about the gas and where the circle's moving. Those make the fights more interesting. It's all the fights in the middle that get bland, and AI just kind of helps change things up a little bit sometimes with that. Then the final pro, and I think maybe the most important thing, like maybe the thing that makes the AI the most important for the game, and I think probably the thing that people would like disagree with the most, maybe the most controversial thing in this, is it gives normal players a win. It gives normal players a chance to achieve something. You know, it's like gives them a chance to be like, hey, I did this. Like, I got into a fight and I won. And like, yeah, it's against AI. And a lot of people would be like, oh, that doesn't matter. Killing AI is easy. But that's kind of missing the point. It's like, for a lot of players, it's just winning a fight. Like, it's just getting something done. So, like, I personally think, like, the thing that drives Warzone players away more than anything other than the hackers and the server issues, which everyone can agree are bad. You know, everyone hates getting killed by a cheater. Everyone hates it when the servers crash and the servers go down. Like, those are obviously bad things that obviously Activision, Infinity Ward, and Raven and everyone want to fix. But in terms of gameplay things, I think the thing that drives people away from Warzone the most is that lots of people, their experience of Warzone, when like their friends convince them to play it, or when they decide to give it another try after staying away for a while, is that they will search for a game. It'll take a little while, but matchmaking is pretty good. Then you've got the lobby, where you've got like a minute of just doing like nothing. Like, you've really got like not very much to do at all. And then you drop in, and that takes a while, you know, the plane flying over the map and you parachuting down. And then they sometimes will just get killed straight away, or they'll get a chance to loot a bit and they'll run around and pick some stuff up. Then they'll get in a fight and die. And that's it. That'll be their experience of Warzone. Oh, and then they'll go to the Gulag and maybe lose that. And it's like, I think for a lot of people, that's their experience of Warzone. And, you know, you see people being like, well, they just need to get better. But it's like, if all you play is Warzone, that's quite hard to get better when it's like you land and you get killed. Like, you land and you get killed. And every time you do that, it's not like, you know, when you're playing multiplayer and you get killed and then a few seconds later you're rushing back into the fight. It's much more like you land, you get killed, you now have to wait another 5 minutes before you can land again and possibly just get killed again. That very quickly will get old. That very quickly will get frustrated. Like, I think that's one of the biggest problems. And for like the original like view of Warzone 2, the version of Warzone 2 they showed off at COD Next, they had bots all over the map. Like, they had bots in houses, they had bots in all of the buildings and all of the loot building, and often it would just be like one bot standing around. The AI wasn't great, they wouldn't like rush you or anything like that, they were just sort of standing there. But it meant that people would have been able to drop in and kill the bots. Like, drop in, get in a little fight with a bot, kill the bot, achieve something and move on. And like Callum saying, which I completely agree with, that Titanfall 2 had the grunts and stuff like that. And Titanfall 2 did it really well. And I talked about this a little bit just before Warzone 2 came out. Where Titanfall 2, the whole point in the lore of like you playing as a pilot is that pilots are like these, you know, augmented, incredible super soldiers that are unbelievably agile, unbelievably good shots and stuff like that. And it gave some contrast of like you had these normal soldiers, the grunts who were on the map, and you could just plow through them, you could kill them. They weren't really a threat, and they were scared of you. Like, they would talk about how scared of you they were. And then the other enemy pilots were so much more intimidating because you had that point of comparison. Whereas in Warzone, everyone's just like some, you know, badass super soldier, so it doesn't really matter. You know, everyone's running around carrying giant guns, jumping through things, surviving, getting shot a bunch of times. It's just silly. But in like Warzone 2, I think the AI could have provided that of like, could have given normal people that feeling of dropping in, getting to get in a few fights with bots and kill some things. And then when they see a player, that would be a scarier moment. It's like, oh, okay, I need to be careful now. That isn't a bot. That's a player. That's a human. I need to think about this differently. And they would have at least had some practice of doing some shooting, doing some aiming, like healing up and all of that sort of thing against the bots before they got into a fight with a player. And they would have more chance of taking out the player because, as like Dave was saying, bots can also give your position away, even if you're not directly fighting them. So it's like a normal player who maybe doesn't play a bunch of Warzone could drop in and like get the drop on another player because they hear the gunshots off and they hear, oh, there's a fighter there, I'm going to go see what's going on, and then take out the other player while they're distracted. That's going to feel really good. That's going to be like, okay, that's great. And the other player who just died might feel a bit like, oh, okay, I can see what went wrong there. Like, I gave my situation away. Maybe I need to use silenced weapons a bit more. Maybe I need to use melee weapons, you know, use throwing knives and things like that to clear out bots so other people don't hear me. It would like make so much more variety in the gameplay. Now, we don't have that because at COD Next, they invited a bunch of people who were generally hyper-competitive gamers who didn't like that. They don't want the sort of participation awards. They don't care about like people who can't not often kill players, like people who lose a lot, because they're not those people. They don't think about those people at all. They just want competition. They want to be fighting other players at a high level. And so for them, it was just annoying having this like extra RNG factor, this like extra bit of bots. And, you know, you saw loads of people who were playing it were just like, oh no, I don't like this. Like, I don't want to have to fight the bots. I was super excited about it. I thought it looked very cool. I thought it looked like it'd be super interesting and would change the game up quite a lot in an interesting way. But, you know, we never got to play that version of the game. Like, that game never got released to us. I don't know whether it was because the creators at COD Next complained about them so much, or maybe it was a technical thing that stopped it happening. But, like, I'm always a little bit resentful that we didn't get to try that version of the game, that we didn't get to play it and see what it was like. But I genuinely think, for a lot of people, that would have been more fun. Like, that would have been a more fun game. And you see it, and, you know, in Tarkov, you have the scavs, you have AI people wandering around, and so normal people can go up and get and fight them and sort of like get some wins against them. I think that's really good. Sorry, John Hand, I don't know what it is that I banned you for in the previous, but when I'm talking about a different topic, asking a question and then putting a question mark and then saying, did you get to my question in the chat? Just comes across a little bit rude because I'm talking about something completely different. But the answer, I'll answer it now because you're just winding me up a bit. How long do you keep people on your banned and hidden list for? They're just on it. Like, they're just banned. They're gone. I don't have a process where I'm like, well, this person's been banned for 2 months. They probably learned their lesson. They're probably a fine person now. No, I don't do that. They're just gone. So anyway, going back to the topic that I was actually talking about, the like I genuinely think having something for normal people to interact with and feel like they get a win is a good thing for gaming. And I know the way that this gets framed in a lot of conversations online is like, oh, it's just a participation award. It's just like you're rewarding someone for doing something that doesn't matter. But it's like you're playing a video game. None of this matters. Like, none of this matters at all. Like, I can understand why maybe they could have it so, like, and I fully agree with Lackey, talks about it a few times, that it'd be cool if ranked was different. It'd be cool if, like, you had ranked and that was just like player versus player, super hyper competitive. Like, ranked was the mode you went to and just had like those kind of fights. And then casual was more, you know, the normal version of it was like a more relaxed thing where you're fighting bots and stuff like that as well. I think that would be fine, but I also don't think they're likely to make two different versions of the game. So while they're not making two different versions of the game, I think it would be better to have the AI in. Now, I would say, like, the way they're implemented right now, where you only get the AI in strongholds, it's probably the worst of both worlds, because the strongholds and the black sites are probably like 90% of the time getting attacked by some of the best players in the lobby, the people who are a bit more confident, the people who can move around the map a lot faster, the people who know when the strongholds are going to be announced, so they're kind of ready to go look for them. They've got in a vehicle, or they've got somewhere high up, so they're ready to go for it. And that means that generally the people who are fighting the bots happen to be the people who it's going to be most annoying for. The people who are like hungry to fight other players, they're going to be the ones encountering the bots. And the players who would get a kick out of fighting the bots and, like, you know, having a good time, get some kills and stuff like that, and then have some interesting interactions with them, they're not seeing them because they're not actually going near the strongholds or the black sites. So it's like we're kind of at this weird situation where I think no one's getting the benefit of the bots. Like, you're just getting the negative side of it, which kind of sucks. Like, and I don't think, you know, as much as I would like them to, I don't think they'll ever go back to the original situation, the original thing that they had, where there were just bots all over the map. So then that leaves me with, like, you know, for me, for someone who quite enjoys having those little fights against bots, so enjoys, like, succeeding in a fight and having a little win when I'm playing a video game, I think, you know, that's why DMZ has picked up for a lot of people. Like, DMZ's been something that people who have tried it have often quite liked it, is because you have exactly that. Like, you know, you're fighting bots, you're having a good time because generally you're winning those fights, and everyone who's playing a game wants to win more often than not. And you can, if you're fighting bots, you can have people winning more often than not. And then sometimes you get the players, and then you have like a more interesting, slightly tenser situation because you've been fighting bots a lot, but now you've got players in the area and you need to think about that. That makes it more interesting. And I think that's why DMZ has become a bit more interesting. It's just a shame for me that all of the other stuff that's like a bit more fun about Battle Royale, like having the, you know, almost roguelite aspect of you're dropping in looting, seeing what you get, you've got the circles closing in, the battle like turns in some sort of crescendo. You don't get that in DMZ. Like, you don't really have that. I know you've got the final exfil, but a lot of the time, like, most of the lobby have left by then, and you've got to wait a long time for it. I think, like, it's a shame that we can't have a battle royale with some of the best elements of DMZ, which I think is what Warzone 2 probably was meant to be originally, and now they've just been backpedaling so much that we've ended up with something that's basically like Warzone 1, but with some of the remnants of that old system that don't really work anymore, which is a real shame. Like, I think it is a shame. But essentially, just to sort of conclude all of my thoughts talking about all of the stuff that I was on about, I genuinely think that bots and AI are a very, very good thing for normal people to A, give variety to the game, and B, just give people a win, give people a chance to win. And I think that's the thing that a lot of these hyper competitive creators don't realize, that they're not taking into account, is that, like, they're really good at the game. You know, they're playing the game for 6 hours a day, 10 hours a day. They're insanely good at it. They're winning most of their gunfights. They're getting that win. They're getting that enjoyment out of the game constantly by being really good at it. Other people, normal people, people who play the game for a couple of hours a week, or, you know, even like people who play like an hour a day in the evenings, don't have that. They're getting beaten by the people who do play 6 hours a day. So they're not getting those wins. They're not getting that enjoyment. And that means they're going to stop playing. And then as more and more people stop playing because they're just not having any fun, because they're not achieving anything, they're not winning anything, they're not having a good experience, then they will quit, and that'll make the average difficulty of the lobbies go higher and higher and higher, which you always see with games like this, where the people who aren't very good at the game quit and aren't having any fun, to stop playing. So the average player level gets harder and harder and harder and harder, until then more and more people quit, because then more and more people aren't having a good time, because they're now finding themselves on the wrong side of that bell curve. That, like, whereas at the beginning, you know, I'm a bit like this. At the beginning of Warzone, I was probably on the top end of the bell curve and doing quite well and winning loads of games. You know, me and my friends were winning more games than we were losing for a while in the first couple of weeks. And then, like, the bell curve switches as all of the people who aren't very good stop playing. And then eventually, like, at some point, the middle of the bell curve passed me. And now I'm on the worst side of it. And it's like, oh, now when I play, I'm probably losing like half of my gunfights or more. And that's not so much fun. So now I don't play as much anymore, and the bell curve will continue its march up towards that hyper-competitive level until you end up with just a few thousand people playing it who are all insanely good and hyper-competitive and also constantly angry about the game and hate everything and don't want to spend money on the game because, you know, they'll also tend to be the people who are like, oh, I'm not going to buy microtransactions. I'm not going to, like, pre-order anything. I'm not going to do anything like this. And we'll also end up getting more toxic because they're so much more invested in the game. And it means that, like, the player base gets worse, in my mind, gets worse and worse until you end up with just this hyper competitive, angry group of people playing the game. And, you know, I think that's what's happening. I genuinely do. And I think bots were kind of a big solution to that. I would even argue that, personally, I would argue for Warzone having bots instead of players to fill up lobbies. I think that would be a good thing. I think, like, especially in the lower end, when you've got people who are maybe not so good against other players, do the same thing that, like, Fortnite's done, like I think PlayerUnknown's done, I'm not sure. The mobile version definitely has. Like I think Apex has done as well, or I've got the impression Apex has, of, like, if you're new to the game or you haven't played for a while or you're just not very good at it, some of the enemy players in the game will be bots, and you'll be able to kill them quite easily. And then that makes you feel a bit better. It makes you have a win. It makes you want to play another game. So you're like, oh, I did really well in that game. I'm going to play another one. And then slowly you get into games with more and more human players. I think that would be a good thing too. I think the way they did it with, like, the AI being very different from players is better, but I think both ways would work, personally. So let's go through some of the chat. Let's go through some of the things people are saying. That's all my piece done. That's what I wanted to say. So, I saw someone saying, Simbag to go right at the beginning said, without them, I wouldn't play. Finally, a game with AI. I mean, yeah, I genuinely think there's a lot of people out. I think they're underrepresented in the content creator space. There's a lot of people who don't find Warzone very interesting without the bots. When you're just fighting against other players, it's just not a lot of fun. Because if you're the sort of person that isn't super competitive and you're not, like, actively trying to get better, you know, you're not following meta build videos and you're not watching movement training things and you're not spending hours practicing and, like, making sure your teammates all know what you're doing and you're communicating well and everything. If you're just the sort of person who picks up the game and wants to have a bit of fun and mess around, it's not a lot of fun getting absolutely destroyed by other people who take it a lot more seriously than you, for sure. And again, and I'll keep on going on about this forever, the people who just want to hop on the game and have some fun, they're the normal people. They are the people who are 100% playing the game right. They're the people who I think the game should be 100% designed around. I think, like, the people who are super hyper competitive, they're the weirdos. Like, they're the odd ones. You know, and people like me who play as much as I do, I'm weird as well. Like, that's not normal. Like, that's not who I'm not who the game should be designed for. When people go on about, like, oh, there should be loads of Easter eggs and stuff like there used to be, it's like, why? There's probably like 500 people in the world who care about the Easter eggs, like, rather than the millions of people that play. That'd be silly. Just scanning through. Fogger said, I like that. Oh, Sean Holland said an interesting thing. Yes, DMZ should be bots only. I do disagree with that. I've heard lots of people say that like, DMZ shouldn't have any PvP at all. It should just be PvE. But I think that's more of, like, a personal preference thing. Like, when I play Ark or Conan or Rust or stuff like that, I don't really like the PvE servers. I get bored on them very quickly because it's just kind of, again, it's like that lack of variety. Like, if you're just always winning, then there's kind of no tension or anything like that, and I don't find it very interesting. I like the mix. I think in DMZ especially, it's nice that you're like generally winning, you're fighting against bots, you're getting stuff done, and then it's like players are like the thing that causes some tension that other players can like make it a bit scarier, make it a bit more exciting. And when you overcome it, it's great. And when you lose to them, kind of sucks, but you can have some excitement. Like for me personally, I like having some of the danger of other players to fight against. But I also, you know, I like DMZ because fighting the bots is easy and stuff like that is also good. It's like, you know, zombies. Lots of people like Call of Duty Zombies because that is essentially like DMZ but with no players. You know, it's like it's the easy mode of Call of Duty, isn't it? Zombies. It's like the whole point of zombies, in my mind, why people like it so much is that it's very controlled, it's very repetitive. You can get better at it just by spending a bit more time on it. You can learn things, you can watch videos and copy what other people do, and it will work for you because there's so many less variables. There's nobody else who's also getting better at the game. You know, unless you're like doing speed runs and stuff like that, where you are sort of competing against other players. If you're just trying to get the Easter eggs done and stuff like that, by playing enough, you will be able to do it because the challenge is completely set and you're just getting better and better. Whereas, you know, it's like challenges there on the graph, your skill getting better and better. Whereas with Battle Royale, it's like your skill's going up, but also the average player skill is going up. And like, you just have to hope you're getting better than the average player. If not, at some point they'll overtake you and then you'll be bad. So yeah, I can understand people wanting DMZ to be bots only. Just for me, I wouldn't be interested in that. And as I said a lot when DMZ first came out, if they ever make DMZ too easy, I think they'll spoil the mode because then all of the missions, all of the things that you can do within DMZ will become completely meaningless because it's like, oh, well, you could have just done that with no players. Like you could, and it kind of is a bit like that already, where some of the missions we've done, I found really easy because we just didn't happen to come across any players when we tried to do it. You know, like that mission where you have to get the weapon case out of all of the different locations. You could be lucky and just get 3 games where you never come across another player, and you do all of those with like only fighting bots. Whereas somebody else could come up to every game they go into, there's other enemy teams also trying to get the weapon case, and that'd make it much, much harder for them. There's a lot of random stuff in that. Fogger said, I like bots in DMZ. They sometimes show you if there's players in it. Oh, yeah, I talked about it earlier. Dave said, I don't want bots in Warzone, but I'd much prefer bots only in DMZ, even though I've made a few friends through proxy chat. Yeah, see, Dave, I mean, we obviously disagree with a lot of things, Dave, but I completely disagree with both of those. Like, I do think bots in Warzone are a good thing, and I definitely don't want bots only in DMZ. House UK said, morning, I don't mind the bots, but Warzone 2 is becoming Warzone 1, and I honestly think that's a misstep. Right now, if they made a PUBG 2 with some sort of buyback mechanic, I'd be off like a shot. Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't necessarily go back to PUBG. Every time I go back to PUBG, I just remember that I don't like the shooting. I find the shooting really clunky and weird in it. I don't know what it is about it that I don't like, but not a lot of fun. And the buyback thing, yeah, it's definitely a big issue. But I definitely do think my biggest problem with Warzone 2 is how they've kind of gone backwards. There's like, I was just quite bored of Warzone 1. Like I said, at the beginning of this, I was very bored of the whole nearly every gunfight being like, whoever's the best at aiming with a sniper rifle or a long-range assault rifle with no recoil, or whoever's got the best movement up close, winning all the time. I don't find that interesting. I get bored of that quite quickly. And the lack of variety is the biggest problem. I think that's why I enjoyed Blackout more. That's why I enjoyed Firestorm more, the Battlefield one. It's because there was just so many different things going on. And there was a bit of RNG in it, but it made every game feel dramatically different. And that's more interesting. And, you know, and I think an easy way to solve that with Warzone 2 would be just get rid of loadouts. Just completely get rid of the gunsmith and loadouts from Warzone. And I think immediately you would have a more interesting game because you would have guns that have way more recoil, so long-range engagements don't really work as well. You know, if you manage to find a sniper rifle that works well from long range, that's awesome, and that should be rare. And it's like something like now, you know, imagine if you go in a game and you see a sniper and it's like, oh my God, I haven't seen a sniper for like 10 games, but now there's someone locking down this area of sniper rifle. How am I going to take them out? Instead of, oh, okay, there's 5 teams around here. They've all got sniper rifles. Like, you know, they've all got one-shot sniper rifles. They've all got the best guns in the game. I just think it makes it very kind of monotone. It makes it very one note, and I don't really like that. Callum said, I feel if they get rid of bots, they'd have to increase the player count anyway for Battle Royale since the map's so big. I think it would just look slower if not. AI gives you something to do. I do agree, although I think there's other ways they could speed up the game. Just speeding up the circles would be a big thing. I just think like the mid game is so boring. And they talked about that a little bit with the season 3 creator call. They were saying they wanted to speed up the mid game by making those circles come in a bit quicker. And I think like they could probably go further with that and just make it so the first circle like takes the same amount of time as it does now, but then from that up until the last circle, all of those are sped up a lot more. I think that would be a good thing. Just make the games like 20 minutes instead of 25 minutes would be good. Good thing with Plunder, there was some AI, but not overloaded with them, like in DMZ. I haven't really noticed the bots in Plunder, really. Are they just in Strongholds, I guess? Then John Hand started his whole thing about how long does people stay banned for? Yep, they just stay banned. I don't know what I banned you for, John Hand, on some... I'm guessing it was on some other account, but I've got no idea. Exactly why Titanfall 2 had grunts. Yeah, we talked about that. If Warzone had ranked at launch without the AI, I don't think we'd have this conversation. Sucks they don't do stuff sooner, but it is what it is. Yeah, I mean, I do always wonder, with the whole thing about, like, why didn't we have this at launch? It's like, one thing that is kind of shocking about Call of Duty is that, as far as I remember, it never gets delayed. Like, has there ever been a Call of Duty game that's been delayed? Like, I do wonder if it's like, you know, we pay for not getting those delays, but we get a game every October or November, you know. It always comes out at the end of October or beginning of November, every single time. And, like, that's the thing that, like, you know, and in exchange for that, things that normally the game would be delayed for, we have to wait a few months to get in an update. Maybe that's how it works, because it is quite different. Wharfdale said, for me, they've completely alienated average players. It's not Call of Duty anymore. I don't know which way you mean by that, Wharfdale. When you say average players, I don't know if you mean, like, they've made it so it serves worse players more or it serves better players more. I would personally say, basically all of the changes they've made to Warzone 2 since it launched have been for the top end of players. And I think, like, they've been chasing after trying to get the streamers on board, trying to get the content creators more on board, trying to get people making exciting clips, trying to sort of, like, make a big deal of the competitive scene. You know, they do all those things on the social media accounts where it's like COD top plays and all of that sort of stuff. It all seems to be about celebrating the very best players. Whereas I don't think that's... I personally don't think that's the right idea. I think they'd be better off being like, hey, Call of Duty's for normal players. Like, we're not Valorant, we're not CounterStrike. You don't need to be insanely good to have fun in this game. Everyone can have a laugh with this. Everyone can just have fun. And I think that's where Call of Duty's been going on for years now, is chasing after the hyper-competitive players. I just think they're never going to be happy. They're always super toxic. They're always super, like, angry about everything to do with the game. There's so much scrutiny on everything because of them. I just think, like, if they made the game focus a lot more on, like, hey, this is a lot of fun, like, you know, like Minecraft did, like Chase After, like World of Warcraft did, like, you know, Final Fantasy 14 stuff, making it being like, hey, this is a game you can have a fun experience with your friends, like Rust did and Ark did and all those games. Just being like, this is about having fun. It's not about being, like, the best of the best of the best. Like, that doesn't matter. Like, that's not a big deal. I think that's the biggest mistake Call of Duty's made over the last decade or two, personally. People who complained about bots are the same people who complained about skill-based matchmaking. They just want their 30 bomb streams. Game shouldn't be bounced around the elite. Yeah, I agree, House. I agree with a lot of stuff you say. I think the AI in Warzone should only spawn in once per stronghold black site. I don't think so. Just I think, like, I think there's a nice balance at the moment of, with the strongholds and black sites, of you get the UAV ping, which is a big advantage of getting a stronghold or black site if it's in a good location. But then if you want to hold that area, you've got to deal with all the AI. Personally, I would like it if the AI would keep on spawning in the entire area that UAV ping was. So it was like, if you go get the black site and you've got that big UAV ping, you've now got to try and hold it. You've got information about where the players are, but you've also got to try and hold it against the AI. I think that would be interesting. I think that would be cool. DMZ's a nice mix. PvE's another game like Ghost Recon. Yeah, I keep thinking that I want to go back and play Ghost Recon Breakpoint, because I've never played much of it. I always got like 10 hours into it, then stopped. And I think it's because the game's probably not very good. But, like, in my head, I'm like, oh, I had so much fun playing Wildlands with Name Gear. Maybe I should try out Breakpoint again. Maybe I'll try and get a group. Maybe I'll try and find a couple of other people who are into playing Breakpoint and just do a playthrough of that game. because I think it could be a lot of fun. I just always get bored of it and stop. Hey there, Rough Rider. Callum said, at the times when I play, I feel like I'm playing a game that would have come before Warzone 1. Rough Rider said, I haven't enjoyed Warzone for a long time. They lost me and all the people I play with eons ago. Love Resurgence, Plunder's fun to screw around and enjoy multiplayer. Yeah, and I found it super weird that they added that Caldera Resurgence, and I heard lots of people saying that they really enjoyed that, and then they took it away again, and it hasn't come back. And it's like, oh, I thought that was just like a new mode. Now, I'm guessing with Ranked coming in, and Ranked will obviously be a permanent mode, I'm guessing we'll have even less of the other modes, like even less of the other playlists. Because I think they have a fairly hard limit on how many playlists they have at any given time. I think. I don't know for sure. They also haven't had routine server maintenance, and maybe they should. I mean, I've got no idea how their servers work, so I've got no idea if that would help. I know some games have that, like World of Warcraft and stuff, but I always thought that was just to clean up. That was to do with it being a persistent world, and I thought, sometimes they need to clear up stuff that just progressively got worse and worse on those servers. Because Warzone, essentially all the servers are reset at the end of every game, I don't know if server maintenance would help. Like, I've got no idea. Fogger said if Warzone just had standard weapons, new players with no ranked up weapons would have the same advantage to others, except the game skill. Yeah, and like my argument for why Warzone should get rid of loadouts, I mean, this might be a topic for another video, for another podcast. That might be a good one for tomorrow's, because we're already massively overrunning. But my argument for why they should get rid of the loadout and just rely on ground loot is that all that stuff I was saying earlier about, like long-range engagement's always been the same. It would be much more interesting if assault rifles just weren't good at range. Like, if the only guns that were good at range were, like, slow guns, like marksman rifles and sniper rifles, and assault rifles just couldn't compete. Because then it was like, most people don't want to take a sniper rifle or a marksman rifle all the time because it, like, takes up one of your slots and it's useless up close. Whereas an assault rifle is kind of the jack of all trades and you can use it everywhere. It would make people take those engagements very differently. That, like, if you see a sniper, you'd be like, okay, I need to try and find a way to move up on them and get closer to them and fight them, and you'd use smokes and stuff like that to do it. To me, that's a much more interesting game. Whereas now it's just sort of like, you watch some people who are really good, and they'll be using, like, a hemlock or something to shoot people who are, like, 200 meters away. Like, just, like, hitting them over and over again. It's like, bap, 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 just hitting their head and killing them. And it's like, that's ridiculous. Like, that just makes the game seem boring to me. Sean Hahn said, COD cash in on Christmas wish list, hence why, regardless of quality, we get a game in October or November. I mean, it's definitely working for them, isn't it? Like, they are the best-selling games every year. Even though they come out at the end of the year, they still end up being the best-selling game, which is just bizarre. Dave says, I just like a chilled experience, not bothered about added competitiveness of fighting players in DMZ. It's a shame we can't have an easy, medium, hard level choice for bots. Like when you're playing the campaign. Oh, crap, I just spilled coffee everywhere. I'm going to end the podcast now because I just spilled coffee all over my desk. So I'm going to have to go clean it up. Right. But yes, I kind of agree. But we kind of got to the end of it. Anyway, thank you so much to everyone that's been watching. I'm going to be streaming later on twitch.tv/Geeky Pastimes. So go follow me on there if you want to see that. I might be playing some Redfall or I might play Kerbal. I don't know. We'll see. Might play some DMZ. And I'll be back tomorrow for more of the podcast. So thank you very much for watching and goodbye.